Welcome to Ink and Magic, a podcast where we read and discuss the writing craft, world building, and romance of paranormal and fantasy novels.
If you love books with bite, set in worlds of magic and mayhem, then you're in the right place. My name's Nikisha Shanae. I go by Ines.
And I'm Leslye. I write as Elle Penelope. And welcome to the show.
Hey, Leslye!
Hey, Ines. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's winter, so I don't have to invent excuses why I'm not going outside. It's really convenient.
And we're actually...
There's snow on the ground, so I'm not going outside.
There is snow on the ground, and we're about to have a polar vortex, so that should be fun.
I haven't even been watching television to know this. Okay, so after we talk, I'm going to the grocery store, and I'm going to buy a whole bunch of junk food and a little bit of healthy food, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, you don't want to be outside for like the next 3 or 4 days. Well, yeah, it'll just keep an eye on the weather because it's a high of 17 degrees in the
Oh my
DMV is
gosh.
not something we're used to. So stay safe out there.
Or in there. Don't go out there.
Preferably in there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to spend some time outside doing everything that I need to do for a week's worth of being inside. Check.
And when you're inside, you can have some wonderful comfort reads.
Yes, because that is what we're talking about today. I'm really excited for this episode. We're talking about the best of 2024, the best books that we read in 2024. And I can't wait to see what Leslie's list looks like. We haven't told each other what's on our list, but I bet we have some crossover.
Maybe. I don't know how much crossover we read, but yeah, we'll see. It's going to be a revelation.
So I wanted to start with these are in no particular order, but there are 2 books that I reread within the same year, and I don't usually do that. I have some books that I reread every year, and I think I've told you guys about my bedtime story, which is Marrying Winterbourne. Whenever I can't sleep, whenever insomnia grabs me, I reach for Lisa Kleypas's Marrying Winterbourne. It's my warm cup of milk. Anyway, so there's 2 books they stayed with me all year. And I just kept thinking about them and telling everybody about them. And then I broke down and I reread them. And the first one that I did that with was Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. I think I told you about this one. Golfer. I am not into golf.
Right.
I'm not even into mini golf. I tried golfing once and I still, I can remember where things hurt. Like I remember like the crease between the thumb and the index finger, how much that hurt the next day. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. There's a lot of cute men out here on the green, but you know what? If this is your pastime, I'm not your girl. So have fun. But the hero of this book was a golfer. And his number one fangirl was always there to support him until he was and he was a jerk. He was an absolute jerk. And she would just forgive him. And she was like a fangirl, like on the other side of the lines. Like she wasn't like in his face. She was just like the captain or the president of his fan club. She just went all out for this golfer. And then as he was just on a downward turn and this is a funny thing. I can't remember. He said something to her. And while he was like on a downturn and he saw the light go out of her eyes, he like saw it happen and he was like, oh no. And then, so this is taking place in Florida. And it was during one of the really bad storms in Florida. And all he keeps thinking about is, how is she? Is she okay? Because she had even won this, she'd won some kind of prize to like have lunch with him and he stood her up. It was just awful. Ooh. And all he can do as he's done. He's in his downward spiral. He's screwed up his career. And all he can think about while the storm is going on is she okay? And so he gets in his car and he goes, because her family owns a golfing store, and he drives to her and her store is decimated. And he's standing there and she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I was just stopping by. He's totally one of those guys who does not understand how to have feelings, how to emote or anything, and to watch him fall, like literally fall to his knees for this woman. See, I'm ready to read it again. I'm ready to read this book again. It's classic Tessa Bailey dirty talk, but with this hero who he starts out this complete jerk, and as soon as his heart goes ba-boom for the first time, he's done. He's over. And it is just I love watching it when men just fall. And you can just in her when she writes his interiority of him thinking, he's even thinking like, what happened to me? I am so gone for this woman. I can't even think straight. It was beautiful. And I read it twice. And I'm going to go read it again.
That sounds lovely. I can hear the joy in your voice.
Oh,
All right. So my first one, in no particular order, was A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. Now, I had tried to read Tia Williams before. We actually had a buddy read
yeah.
of 6 Days in June.
I was so offended that you didn't like that book, Leslye.
I couldn't finish that book.
Ugh.
I gave up in the middle of it. I wasn't. It was one of those things where it was too much. The characters were being tortured too much. There was too much abuse. It was just too heavy, and
Yeah.
I just couldn't deal with it.
Same.
But I had heard cool things about this one, and I wanted to give her another try, and I really loved this one. So, A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. Ricky is the youngest daughter of this wealthy Black family, and she has 2 or 3 older sisters. You know, me and details are not going to be the best because I read this earlier in the year. But and she wants to open a flower shop. So she moves away from her family and she moves to New York, and she opens this flower shop. She lives in the back, and it's just really like innovative, sort of weird flower shop. She's kind of a quirky, you know, like maybe kind of bohemian woman, and she's just had to break with her family because they are a lot. And so there's an older woman who lives upstairs, who I think she's renting her space from. And her family is in the funeral business, which I thought was interesting too. Anyway, she meets this dude. They do not get along immediately. Something is wrong. And then it's interspersed with these stories of this guy in the 20s who's a musician, and so we're going back and forth, and so it's a contemporary love story, but it's got supernatural elements to it.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's really wonderfully written. The love story is great. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of weirdness, and as a fantasy writer, the supernatural elements are they're not detailed, you know, like when you get to what is happening and what's going on, you're like, oh, there could be a whole nother book about this. But it's enough for what you know she's trying to do with this book. And I just really enjoyed it. I loved it. So I would highly recommend it.
I have not read that, and I really enjoyed the first book that I read of her. So I'm gonna have to add that to my TBR. We did warn you guys, right, that this is gonna be an addition to the TBR. So
Right.
not sorry. Here's the question before I get to my second book. When you do, because you reread
I do. Sometimes.
for your Goodreads challenge, does the reread count?
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking
I
because
think so. It's a book that I read.
if I get over 50% in the book and then I DNF, it counts because 50% of my time is worth something.
Yeah, that's more aggressive than me. Like, you know, I can get to 75% and it won't count because if I didn't finish it, I didn't finish it. It's not read until I finished it. It's DNF'd.
Wow. Okay. No, we're different there. But we're the same in my second book because I know you read this book. You may have even recommended it to me, or you were like, duh. Well, of course you would like that book. Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Katie Wilde.
Of course. And that is one that I have reread several times and actually reread it
See?
this year.
See? So I have no idea what drove. Oh, yes, I do, because I loved her motorcycle books. Those were the first ones that I had read from her. Those really short motorcycle books that her and Alexa Riley and that
That was
whole
good.
gang
Yeah.
did. And I was craving something short like that. And then I saw this short romantasy, and I was like, really? A romantasy that's not 100,000 words? Let me have it. Oh. And I remember one of the very first books that I read on a Kindle was Courtney Milan's what was that
Duchess
in
Steele?
was it the Duchess deal? Where the very first book?
The novella one?
The novella one that doesn't feel like a novella. It feels like a full
Right.
book. That's the point that I'm trying to make. This felt like a full it felt like a fully fleshed 100,000 word book that I read in a sitting. And that's what I've been craving that. And I tore through. This is the Deadlands series. I think there's like 7 books in this series. This was the first one. This remains my favorite ones. Oh my gosh. Midwinter Mail Order Bride. So there's a new king. His name is Kael the Conqueror. And he literally did that. He was like born in servitude in the Deadlands, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's like this desert land. And he defeated the overlords of his land and then cut a swath through the lands until he vanquished like a cruel king. And so now you have this man who was a kid born in service, and everyone's looking to him. And he's like, I hate this. I'm sitting on this throne. They even put flowers on the throne. Why do I need flowers on a throne? Is somebody really going to smell my butt? Like, what is happening? I hate this. I just want to get out and do something. And then his squire or chamber person,
Yeah,
chamberlain,
Chamberlain or like Viceroy, something like that.
sure, whatever he is. He's like, oh, by the way, your bride is here. He's like, what? I have a bride? I didn't know I had a bride. I didn't know I was dating. Because something that is mentioned early on, that I am really big on empathy. And like, what's the reason that's going to make me care for this person? What's the reason that's going to make me care for this hero or heroine? With KL, he'd done what he thought was, he'd done the right thing of getting rid of these awful overlords. And he thought, well, people are going to be happy and grateful. But the women of the palace, they were servicing him, and he thought that they liked him, but it was because the old king did some not so nice thing to the younger women, and they wanted to keep him occupied, keep Kale occupied, thinking that if they didn't occupy him, he would go and look for the younger women. And when he figured this out, he was like, I don't want anybody in my bed that is there for any other reason that they like me. And so he was like, he like gone like a year, I think, celibate or something like that. And so the Chamberlain was like, yeah, this is a problem. This is not natural. So they sent out mail to the kingdoms in 4 different directions saying that he needs a bride. And one woman answers. And it's perfect. He sees her and she's feisty, and she's under the influence at the time. To get her there, they put her under the influence. And she's feisty, and he's like, yes, she will do. And then because she's under this intoxicant, she lets slip that she's going to kill him, which he's like, that's cool, no problem, I'll talk you out of that. But then she basically says that, she's there kind of like the other women, like she's never gonna love him, she doesn't like him. And he's like, okay, it's off, I'm sending you home. But he's still so into her that he takes her home himself. And so it becomes kind of a road trip of him taking her home and them falling in love. Oh my God, it was so perfect. It was just absolutely wonderful. And it had my favorite kind of, when a guy, I keep calling this the Edward moment when Bella is fighting Jacob, when he's just standing there and like, look at her fight, look at her go, she's magnificent. He's like holding the other people back, like, no, just watch her, just watch that punch she threw. And he does that. He's like, she can handle herself. She's got this. And I love it when a hero does that. And he does this. And now I want to go read this again too.
He's one of my favorite heroes. I really like Kale the Conqueror. Because he's strong, but he also is very self-aware. He's got good values. There's a whole thing in this entire series about love being the real magic. And yeah, it starts there. I've read everything in that series. I've read everything Katie Wilde has written. But yeah, I do. This is one of the favorites of hers, of mine.
What's your next one, Leslye?
So my next one is a book called Quiet Types by L.H. Cosway. And she, I believe, is an Irish writer. This book takes place in Ireland. It's a contemporary romance. And it's about a young woman who is a housekeeper. She has her own business, basically cleaning houses. And she has this sort of, like, if you've ever commuted on public transportation, you might have like a commute crush, like someone you see a couple times a week or every time you're on. Like, I used to take the metro to work, and there'd be commute crushes. So basically, she takes the bus and she sees this guy, and they kind of, there's not a thing, like sometimes he'll sit next to her, but he doesn't actually speak. She doesn't realize this at first, but he is mute. And it's just, so I was drawn to it because I like mute heroes. I was writing a mute heroine in my last book, Daughter of the Merciful Deep. And anytime a hero is deaf or mute, because I was studying to be a sign language interpreter for a while. He speaks in sign language. And It's always going to be a draw for me. So yeah, they have this. At first, there's a lot of miscommunications because she doesn't know that he can't speak, and she's like, "Why is he doing this to me?" But they're both very like she is in this sort of emotional hole, and so is he. And he works security at a hotel, I believe. And then as they get to know each other and they sort of cross those barriers, and she starts learning sign language. Oh, the other conflict is she's dyslexic. And so he writes everything, but she doesn't want to admit that she's dyslexic. So that's part of the initial thing where he's like writing notes and she's like not paying any attention to them. And so he feels rejected. And she's like, I don't want to admit this thing that she believes to be, a detriment for her. So all kinds of not like big misunderstandings, but actual conflicts to a real relationship, to their basic communication happening. And once they start getting through that, it's just really beautiful. I really enjoyed it. He's protective and she's very introverted and very alone and like isolated. And then they come together. And so I really loved Quiet Types. There's another book in the series that just came out. I haven't read it yet, but I am interested to see about his cousin. And so maybe there'll be future books like this one.
That's lovely. This is we're really getting a lot of diversity with the big D in
Mhm.
books and in films and in television shows. I really, this is a great time to be alive and to be a person who consumes media.
Exactly.
I'm debating on the next one. If I'm trying to rank them. Actually, you know what? Let me go with I'm gonna go with Katie's Girl, because there was that whole little clique of Katie Wilde and Alexa Riley and Ruby Dixon. I can't remember everybody,
I love
but
it.
mhm. Another one that I read in that from that clique, because the Midwinter Bride had started as one of those clique books because they would do some books together and then put them out. And Bound to the Battle God by Ruby
Mm.
Dixon snatched my soul. Um, I don't usually I'm one of those probably rare people who try to read Ruby Dixon's alien romances, and I couldn't
The
get out of the
Register.
first chapter because of the
Um,
rape. Um, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And when an author does that, like I stopped, you broke my trust. Like that's
mm.
just one of the things that I cannot read rape on the page. It's just too much for me. And so I couldn't get past it. But I knew she was an amazing writer, and I was like, I really want to read her. And she just seems like a really cool person. Like when you like read what other authors are talking about her or what her readers are talking about her. So I was like, okay, she's written a romantasy. Let me try it. And I read Bound to the Battle God, and it was so very good. So it's a portal fantasy. So and it's in an apartment built. So this modern woman basically gets sucked through a portal, and she is thought to be a slave. And it is the time of year when this whole land is worshiping their god, and they worship the battle god. And they think that the gods don't usually come down. Um, it's like hundreds of years between times when the gods actually come down, and it just so happens this time the gods have come down, and they are about to like execute these women. And the battle god that comes down, he's like, why are you doing this? Did I ask you to do this? They're like, well, no, but this is what happens. And then the god's like, well, what happens to the women who don't get murdered in my name, which I didn't ask for? And the priest is like, well, I get them. And so of course you have this modern woman who was like, no, this is not gonna happen. And she and it was that feel of a human being of lower class being used as almost like a pet or a pawn. Like you were pushed down as a human, which was it's hard for me. And I was like, oh, is somebody about to get raped again? And that's not what happens. The battle god basically takes this woman, they go on a journey, because he has to basically prove himself to basically their all father god, because all the gods got shoved down back on this earth-like planet. And as he goes on his trials to re-attain his godhood, the person that the human that binds themselves to him, you learn really early on that they're not supposed to make it. But they fall in love with each other. So that becomes the conflict of, if I reattain my godhood, she has to die. How do I solve this? And it was just, again, it was just another one of these heroes who never had to deal with emotions because he's a god. And he falls for this woman and he's like, I'm not giving her up. I'm not giving up my godhood. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make it happen? And the way, of course, it's a romance. And the way that it happens is unexpected and it's lovely. And it was a long book, so I don't know if I'm going to reread this one again.
That's really interesting because I tried to read this book and I could not finish it, and I did not like him, and I did not like it. And he was too harsh. I couldn't see, I got to the part where they were on the journey, and there was just nothing redeemable about him. It was very long and slow, and so I'm glad that you liked it. I do like Ruby Dixon books. I haven't read Ice Planet Barbarians, but I read some of her other series. I read her Dragons. I've read some of the other Rizdiverse books. And so, yeah, I like her in general, but yeah, I was like, oh no, this series is just not for me.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, period. Yeah. What's your next one?
My next one is one of my favorite authors who hadn't written anything in quite a while. And then she went, I guess she was always traditional, but she was with small presses. Charlotte Stein, When Grumpy Met Sunshine.
Oh!
It was her first book with, let's see, what publisher is this? Oh, she was St. Martin's Griffin. And it's got a cartoon cover. And she's not really a cartoon cover type of writer as far as her other books.
I think that's a marketing thing. I really do.
Yeah, but this one was. I mean, she's got a wide range of things, and she is not for everyone. Her style is very specific, but I really adore Charlotte Stein. And so this was Opposites Attract, another contemporary romance in England with this ex-footballer, ex-soccer player who is very grumpy. And I guess it's a Ted Lasso kind of thing. There's a grumpy guy on Ted Lasso. I think he was the basis of this hero.
Kent?
Probably. I don't watch that show. But yeah, and he's has been badgered into writing a memoir about his life, and he's this huge star. And so we have the ghostwriter comes in, who is this woman who is like always wearing these dresses and these cool shoes, and she's very sassy, and she's not about his BS. And so you have this grumpy sunshine, literally in the title, Opposites Attract, and then you add on the celebrity and the fact that she is BBW, and then once they do fall for each other, there's the paparazzi and the public, and they don't think that she's right for him, and he lives in a house with no furniture. It's just it's great. I love a grumpy sunshine story. And then you add on to it one of my favorite authors. And yeah, I thought that this was really cool, and it was very sweet. And seeing him, seeing that super grumpy character fall and then become completely devoted and make the mistakes that he makes. And then there's a good grand gesture. There's really good side characters, secondary characters. So
yeah, highly recommend Grumpy.
It. I do love Grumpy. Who doesn't love Grumpy, right?
Me. Which is why this book didn't jive for me the way that it did for you. Because I'm like, Charlotte Stein! I got it on NetGalley, and then I bought it because I bought the audiobook because I was like, I'm not going to read. If I have the opportunity to listen, I'm not going to read. And so I bought the audiobook. But yeah, he was there's a level of grumpy, and I don't know what it is. And I love her.
He was too grumpy?
He was not the endearing kind of grumpy, I think.
Oh, see, I thought he was. Interesting.
It's so, yeah. Yes. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to reread, I haven't yet because she put out book 1 and then book 2 released soon after. When I read it, Bewitched by Laurel Thalassa. I think the both of us had tried to read The Four Horsemen, and it was too much. I
read the first one, and I was like, okay, I can't do this again.
I couldn't get through the first one. That was abuse. But
I've read other things by her. I mean, she's a good writer, and the series was huge, took off.
But people that's the thing. When you're a good writer and you take story matter and you hit us in the heart. I was like, no, I'm mad at him. You probably could make me you probably are going to make him fall for her, but I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
And I was mad at him in the first couple of chapters. I was like,
Of
no.
course. He's awful. He's pestilence, right? That's the first book?
Pestilence.
He's literally
It was
pestilence. Like,
gross. It was so gross. But Bewitched. Okay. I love a crazy hero. I don't know what it is. Like, you give me an unhinged hero or an unhinged heroine, and I'm just sitting forward. So, Bewitched is, it starts with this young woman. She's a witch without a coven, and she is trying to get into a coven, which is kind of like a school. Like the werewolves have schools, and it's a really interesting world. It's our world, but she's trying to get into this coven. And she has to basically do a thesis proposal in order to get into this coven. And so she dreams up this thesis proposal. She spends all of her money to go somewhere in South America to start the research for this thesis. And her plan
Galapagos, I believe. She was supposed to be going.
Did you
Yeah.
read this?
I started reading it. I have not continued.
Oh, okay. Her plane goes down. She's the only survivor. I believe she was the only survivor. And she's trudging through the jungles, but she's being pulled somewhere. She's being pulled to the tomb of this dead sorcerer, wizard, sorcerer, whatever a male magic person is. I don't know. And she's pulled there, and she wakes him up. He's been slumbering for hundreds of years, and she wakes him up. And she's like, oh, crap. Hand waving him, she gets home.
I did not get to
She was
part.
hand waving him. She gets back home. She gets into the coven. And he comes for her.
Mm.
He believes that she is his long-lost wife and true love, and that she is the one that cursed and betrayed him.
Ooh.
And he is on a revenge kick. He is still completely, totally, utterly in love with this woman, and he admits it, and he's like, but you're going to pay for what you did to me. And thus starts this cat and mouse of her trying to keep him at bay, get away from him. And he's like, no, one, I love you. Two, I'm going to torture you.
I know you love this. It's not sounding amazing to me at the moment.
Crazy, but he does not deny for a second that he is devoted to this woman. He just wants to make her suffer a little bit because he suffered for hundreds of years. And I won't spoil it. Just know that he was dead wrong. Dead wrong for everything. Of course, he was dead wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder, like, how is she going to go into a book 2 with the two of them? And she did. And book 2 is basically like the apology tour.
Mm.
But still, he is still unhinged. He is still crazy. But now she's like, I like it. And just as the first book ended on a cliffhanger that you would not cliffhanger, that's the wrong word. A twist that I did not see coming.
Mm-hmm.
The second book ended on an even bigger twist that I could not have predicted. I don't know how she did what she did, but she did it. Like, the character, the heroine, the other characters, they were all like, what the fuck? And now I'm mad because book 3 is like a prequel. No, I don't want a prequel. I need to know what happens next. And it ends on one of those. It's not a cliffhanger. It is. She doesn't do cliffhangers.
Okay.
Remember we talk about the open doors that episodic television does? There's a subplot coming along, and then all of a sudden that subplot blows up. That's what happens. That's what happened in book 1. That's what happened in book 2. You don't, it's like it was there all along, but you didn't see it sneaking up on you and going boom.
Nice.
I miss this world. I want to be back in this world. I'm probably going to reread this before I reread Fangirl. Oh, that was, yeah, I can understand why you didn't like it because he was That
Well, I didn't even get to him yet, and I didn't necessarily. It was just slow. The beginning, I got to the plane crash, and then I just kind of went on to other things. So I will try to continue it again. It was just even getting to that point, I'm like, this has been a long time. What's happening here? We haven't met a hero. She also doesn't have a memory, or when she uses her
yes,
magic, she loses her
yeah,
memory,
yes.
and I don't know. I don't know. I can't say I didn't like it. It's just it didn't grip me. I was not hooked in the beginning, so I will give it another shot to get to meet
Oh,
him at least.
amazing that we are like, I thought we would have something in common, and we're like opposites right now. What do you have next? I want to know. Like, will it be another one of my DNFs, or I'm not lukewarm reads?
This is probably one you haven't read because it's not technically a romance. It's not a romance at all, actually.
Mm.
It is A Rip Through Time by Kelly Armstrong. And so,
Why is she writing non-romance?
well, over the course of the series, I feel like there by the end, I expect these two people to get together, but it'll probably might take 5 books.
I'm
And
out.
I think I've read the first 4, at
Oh
least 3 or 4.
wow.
Well, there's only 4 out, so I saw on her website the next one should be the last one. So anyway, A Rip Through Time is about a modern day Canadian police detective who gets pulled through a portal into 19th century Scotland and into the body of a maid named Katrina. And
There's no love
so
story,
what?
and there's no love story.
Well, no, they're kind of. So she's a maid in this man's house. He's a doctor, Dr. Gray. I mean, his name is Gray. And so she looks like this other woman who's a 19-year-old maid, and she's like a 30-year-old police detective. So she's in her body, and she's trying to navigate 1869 in Scotland. Now she's Scottish, like her grandmother was from Scotland, so she knows a lot of random facts about how things were. But she also has her police detective skills, and
Mm,
so she has to kind of. And Katrina, the person whose body she's in, was not a nice lady. Like she was a criminal, and she was doing some dirt, and yeah. So part of it is like, can Mallory, who's the name of the actual woman, get home? Everyone thinks she's Katrina, but who had a head injury. Now that's why she's acting differently. And of course, her boss is this very hot doctor slash undertaker um, in this time period. So, so yeah, it's a mystery. The first book is about like, how did she get here? There is a sort of a Jack the Ripper type of killer on the loose, and she's helping to solve crimes. And so that's kind of what the series is about. And spoiler: she does not go home at the end of the first book. She's still there for several books. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It is historical, but with the modern sensibilities. And so it's a
mhm,
modern woman, taking a look at how can she fit into society that she doesn't quite understand.
yeah.
And also she's kind of falling for her boss, but he's a tough cookie. But yeah, I expect there to be some kind of very, very slow burn situation by the end of the series. It's
Mm,
delightful.
yeah, you lost me. You had me at Kelly Armstrong and Portal, and then you lost me at Slow Burn.
I know.
I'm impatient when I'm on the page. I want to see the kissing. Okay, so the next book is one of the last books that I read in 2024, and I'm mad. I'm really mad at this author. She hasn't misstepped. You know when
You're mad because she hasn't misstepped?
Yep. Yep. I'm petty, and my mad is all petty because I really believe that this woman is unfairly talented. I really believe she double dipped when
Oh,
it came time to have talent. She went back twice, and that's not fair.
that is not
Allie
fair.
Hazelwood, I know you double dipped, and I'm calling you out
Uh,
on it.
yeah, all right. Yeah, we got you.
It's not fair.
Insanely talented. Ridiculous.
Insanely. And like when this is not what you trained to do. And then
Hmm.
you step up in the game and you win. It's not fair. But I can't be mad. No, I can't be mad.
We can
I
do that.
can I can I can hate read. God
Which
damn,
of,
she's
which of her
talented.
many, many novels that
I
she published
know,
in the
right?
past 6 months
Like, I'm
did
thinking the
you?
same thing. I'm thinking the same thing, like, which of her books that she released this year is the top? And this book wasn't even on my radar. And our friend Theodora Taylor, because I was talking to her, I can't remember what we even talked. I can't even remember why she told me to read this book. But I said something to her. Oh, I don't know. I said something to her, and she was like, "You need to read Check and Mate." It's like, it looks YA. She's like, you need to read Check and Mate. It's like, I don't think so. You need to read Check and Mate. Okay, fine. It was in audio. It was in the books. It was in the library. I was like, fine. I opened it up, and I knew I was going to be sucked in because it's Allie freaking Hazelwood, and she does not miss her words. And it was YA, but it was an Allie Hazelwood YA.
Mm.
So I got confused too, because it was like she named the heroine, and she named how the heroine was studying when she was younger. She was studying with a girl who was her best friend, and they had a lot of fun in her room. And I was like, wait, what? What happened? What did you do? But she was saying this as she was on a date with a guy in his car and having a good time in his car. And it's like, what? This is YA. I don't understand what's happening here. I didn't get it. I didn't understand that she was bisexual because she doesn't come out and say she's bisexual.
Oh, okay.
So I was confused because I was thinking YA rules. No sex is going to happen. And this everybody's going to be heterosexual. Or there might be a gay best friend. Nope, that's not what she did. So the heroine is this bisexual girl that is not at all like the plot of the story. It's very casually dropped because it's not a big deal. And I like it. I have some friends of mine who write sapphic romance, and one of the things that they hear their readers saying is that they love it when this is being a lesbian. It's just, this is normal. It's not. There's not a light shown on it.
Right.
And that's one of the things that this book did. It fascinated. This is a book about chess. This heroine was like a chess prodigy because of her dad. And all you know is that she stopped, and her dad betrayed her and betrayed the family. And that mystery carried for a while. We talk on the show a lot about asking those questions and planning those questions and not immediately answering them. And that's one of the things that keeps readers leaning forward, because when you drop a question, you have to know the answer. She's really good at this. Like, this is something that we're taught. She's what? She's like a physicist or something?
Some kind of science. I don't even know what kind.
Unfairly talented. So she sits down. She does a favor for a friend, and she goes to this chess tournament. And she hasn't played in years. She's like a mechanic. She takes care of her whole family. Her mother has an illness, a debilitating illness. Her sisters are in school, and she's taking care of everything. She's like maybe 20 years old at the time, 19 or 20, something like that. And she's just responsible for everything. And a friend of her best friend is like, I need you to help me come to this tournament. We don't have enough people, something along those lines, and just play. So she sits down at this chair, and she looks up and she's like, this guy is gorgeous and he looks familiar. And she realizes this is like the number one chess player in the world, who's a young kid like her, like he's like 20, 21 too. And they're playing, and she kind of just zones out and kicks his butt. And he's kind of left staring, and she's freaking out a little bit because it looked like he has a temper in the media. They made it look like he has a temper. And so she bolts away. And so, of course, this is the romance between the two of them as she starts to qualify for like the big chess tournaments. There is some amazing dark moments here. She has 3 dark moments. She has like an internal dark moment and like 2 external dark moments. Wow. And they're different parts of the story. And I was like, my heart was just racing. Like, because you think once you get past the first dark moment, that they're good. No. And then you think when you get past the second dark moment, then they're definitely okay. No. Like, who does that? Who has 3 dark moments? Who does that? And the other thing that was just really amazing about this book was the sisterhood. This heroine had 2 younger sisters and her mother and her best friend. And as much as it was about the romance between her and this chess prodigy, and them coming to trust each other and learn from each other, and the games that they played, I can't play chess. I can't do anything. But when someone writes it, like in the Queen's Gambit, that makes you understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's how this was. All he wanted to do was to play chess with her again. And she just kept saying, no, she would not play with him. And it was like that was the sex. When he was like, tell me what you would do in this situation. my God, because she would not play with him.
Sexy chess moves.
Oh, it was so good. But the sisterhood, like the heroine and her best friend who were so close. They started to grow apart when the best friend went off to college, and they stopped. Their communication got jarred, and that relationship and how it was fixed was perfect. The heroine and her sisters, and the different relationships she had with her sisters, and the different relationship that she had with her mother, and the different relationship that she had with her mentor, who was also a woman. This book was really about sisterhood as much as it was about romance. And I think that's one of the reasons why it did so incredibly well, because it proves the point that relationships, whether it's two guy buddies, whether it's a mother, a daughter, sisters, best friends, they all follow the romance beats. They all follow the romance beats, and you could see it. You could like clock it. And so there were so many. You were constantly falling in love in this book, and good job, Allie Hazelwood. Even though you are a cheater when it comes to talent.
So if they were in their 20s, it's not really YA. I guess it's more new adult, right? That's why it doesn't
I think it
follow
was
YA
put
rules.
under YA. I think it was put under there.
That's weird.
It should not have been.
Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna check it out. I have read
You
several of her
should,
books.
Leslie. It was really, I think I read it in one setting, and no, it was two because I got mad. I was like, she did it again. This is why it's not even, and I'm not spoiling anything. There isn't sex on the page. There's a lot of sex in this book, but there's sex on the page. And I was like, how am I reading this when there's no sex on the page? And it's supposed to be like YA themes. Talent cheater.
Okay, so my next book that I loved this year was The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest. And I just realized these are all contemporary, except for Rip Through Time, which has historical in it. But yeah, I read a lot of contemporary. I don't, because I'm writing so much fantasy. Anyway, this was great. So we have this, both characters are Black, and the hero is a fantasy author. He had this one book, it didn't do anything, it went out of print really quickly with a small like international press, but the heroine loves this book. And so she writes this author, she has no idea who he is, he's using a pen name. And it has an epistolary quality because they write back and forth for a while. And so they begin this sort of relationship over email. And then he ghosts her. He gets a little too close, and he's got, he wants to keep his anonymity. But turns out, months later, he becomes her like next door neighbor or something, unbeknownst to them at first. And so, yeah, like he realizes who she is, and they actually kind of fell in love over email. And then it's one of those things where he can't reveal who he is, and he's trying to set her up with someone else, but then he doesn't really want to do that. She has these sisters, and I think the sisters get books too. I think all 3 books might be out now. And they're all named after flowers. And so they're kind of like Black, not Black elite, but like upper middle class Black people with certain expectations. And the heroine doesn't feel like she's living up to the expectations of her family. Kind of like a love story for Ricky Wilde in that way, where, you've got, they just bring in culture in a way that it's not about racism in any way per se, but it is about the way that racism has affected Black families, and how, especially if, college educated, upper middle class Black families wanting to move a certain way. And if you want to get outside of that, that's kind of her internal conflict. And he has a lot of issues with his family and wanting to be, this sort of was writing career that didn't go where he wanted it to go. But yeah, it's always cool to read about writers and how I like that. And especially this fantasy world that he's created. He created this sort of epic fantasy, kind of like Middle Earth type of thing. And it's just a really cool love story because she works in publishing, in children's books, but she wants to do other kinds of books. And they're in New York. And yeah, it's sweet. It's bookish. Everybody in the book is bookish. And I think that everyone should read this.
That sounds lovely. Yeah, I actually love reading tons and tons and tons of romantasy. Reading contemporary is like maybe 1 book a month, and I read a lot of books a month. And I usually don't like it when I don't like jumping on bandwagons. So I resisted reading Fourth Wing for a long time. And then I read it. And it was really, 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 really good. I mean, do I even have to say any more? It was Fourth Wing.
Yeah, probably if you're listening to this, you probably read it. I did read it. It didn't make my top list, but I thought it was good. I didn't want to read any more in the series after I read it, but I did enjoy Fourth Wing.
I will say too that I listened to the graphic audio. I tried to listen to the regular narration before, the unabridged narration, I guess it's called, and I couldn't get into it. I'm a snob when it comes to narrators. And if you can't differentiate your speaking voice from the character's voice to like the hero's voice, I can't handle it.
Mm.
And I had trouble with this narrator's interpretations. And then my library got the graphic audio, and I was like, oh wow, it's like I think the unabridged was like 20 hours and the graphic audio was like 12. And
Because
I
they
was like,
cut stuff. You're not getting the whole book.
yeah, you're not getting the whole book. It's like just action. I was like, let me see, let me try. And I loved it.
Hmm.
I didn't love like I don't graphic audio people. When people are running, we don't need to hear the
Oh, I've never experienced a graphic audio, so now I'm actually
ugh.
curious. It's
If
like
they
a radio stage, like a
Yeah,
radio
very
drama,
much, very much. Like you get the sound effects and everything and all that. It's just when people are running, you really don't need to hear that. You really, really, really don't need to hear
but
that.
they are so it's kind of like a comic book where if you turn your novel into a comic book, you cut out most of the text. It's just like the core action and some dialogue. That's kind of what it is in the audio format.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think it works well when it's first person and you
Okay.
get that into about that interiority, that inner monologue.
Interesting.
I think I bet you that's what works. I bet you if you have, and I haven't listened to a whole bunch,
Mhm.
but I bet it works less when it's third person.
Yeah.
'Cause then yeah, you would be cutting out a lot. But that's my opinion. I read that, and then at first I was like, I'm satisfied. I don't need to read Iron Flame, and then I did. um, and I wasn't too upset because in a second book they often break the couple up.
Mhm.
And if you read Fourth Wing, the couple he he lied to her. And they were having an argument at the end of that book, and in the second book, they were still having that argument. But I think she was smart because Rebecca Yarros, this isn't her first rodeo. She wrote contemporary for a while, and so she understands the rules. And I liked that the heroine. I'm talking about Iron Flame now. I like that the heroine. She was like, "You did wrong, and I am going to hold your feet to the fire." And the hero's like, I understand that you think that I did wrong, but I did wrong because it was the best thing for you. And they're having this argument, but they're clearly still completely in love with each other. Neither of them wants to back down, and you kind of watch because both of them have valid points. And so I like that she was doing that, where it wasn't just like, I'm mad at you, and we're gonna be apart until it's appropriately time in the plot for us to get back together.
I hate
It
that.
was it was they both had very valid points, and she was in my opinion, she was proving to us how Violet was right and how her hero, how he had some really, really valid points too, and how they compromised. It was a book of compromise, and I
Hmm.
really, really enjoyed how she did that. So I'm glad that I bought the hype. However, the third book comes out very soon, probably around the time that this releases, and the graphic audio isn't ready yet. So I'm just gonna have to avoid the internet and spoil. I don't really care about spoilers because I still want to experience the story, but I'm gonna wait until the graphic audio comes out because now I can't read it any other way.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Mhm.
So my
What's up
next
next,
book
Leslie?
is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Also, not a romance at all. Nothing
What is
romantic
going
happens
on?
in this. I'm not like you. I can read things that aren't romances. In fact, I like to. At this point in my life, it's hard for me to do a romance.
Mm.
I'm I've read so much romance over the past, I don't know, 15 years. And I'm just like really seeking out really innovative and different things because sometimes the beats get a little bit much for me if it's not done like amazingly well. So I wanted to read Vicious because of some reason for something that I'm working on, and I cannot remember why right now. It was halfway research for some ideas that I had. And it is basically the story of it's the series is called Villains, and it's villain origin story. So it's a world I've seen it like referenced as sort of a comic book type world. That's not how it came to me, but I don't really read comic books, so I might have missed some of the references if she was trying to make a comic book world come to life. These two guys, Victor and Eli, they're college roommates. They're frenemies, I guess, and they're doing research on basically superpowered people who aren't at the beginning of the book are not prevalent. Like it's not a world with people with powers at first, but they sort of create powers. They do this experiment and they each get powers and then they become enemies when things go wrong. And these people are doing bad things. There's some, you can call it a murder or an accidental death. There's some people are dying. One of them goes to prison, one of them sends the other to prison, one of them wants revenge. But the storytelling is really well done. It goes back and forth in time, and you're getting these reveals as you're going through between what's happening now in the present and what happened when they were in college 10 years ago. And then there's the secondary characters that come through are so good and interesting, and the powers are interesting. And then when they use those powers, everything is just put together like a puzzle piece, like a puzzle really well. Like everything connects and it flows. And it's not a long book, but yeah, I was just sort of just brought through every moment of it. And like the main character, Victor, is technically a villain, but he's also like an anti-hero. So you're on his side and you see the save the cat moments, what he does for the people he sort of cares about, even though he kind of can't care about anyone. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. And even though it's not a romance, it's got just great characters and a really cool story and an interesting world, even though it's not, it is sort of a unique, specific world that is like our world. But I always like it when, it's not New York City. They've made up, Victoria Schwab has made up kind of city names and a culture for this place this city that the story takes place in. And I'm a big fan of that as well. So thumbs up on that.
Yay. Okay, we're at my last book. And this is, I didn't do this on purpose, but this was, as I'm looking at this list, this was my favorite book of 2024. And it wasn't written in 2024. I'm late to the game. Our friend Golden Angel, who we should have on the podcast.
Absolutely.
She was telling me about, I think she was telling us about Alona Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
Just this husband and wife team who writes romance together. Oh, that is the dream. But and I couldn't remember which book she was saying she loved so much. I just kept remembering the name of the character, and she said Rogan. So I think I may have picked up the wrong book first, and then I picked up the right book, which was Burn for Me. And I tore through this series. It's a 7-book series, and the first 3 books are Rogan's story with his heroine. And I tore through it. I read like a book a day. Like I was chain smoking. Like, yeah. Oh, Rogue again, another psychopath. He is an absolute psychopath, like a diagnosed psychopath. So it's this world where there are some people that have magic, and the families will. It's almost like Psy Changeling. It's almost like the Psy, where the families will marry based upon the type of magic that they're hoping the offspring will have.
Mm.
That's the world. And so even though there is a government, it's really ruled by the houses of these magic kind. And our heroine, this is in first person. Our heroine, they're quiet. Her family has magic, but they have never been diagnosed with it, or it's never been like people don't know that they have magic. They keep it very quiet because they are all like basic high gradients, but they know that it will be dangerous if people find out their magic. So they keep it quiet, and they're a family of basically detectives. Like they have a detective agency. And so they solve these crimes. And then they run into Mad Rogan. because they're trying to find basically his nephew. And he's trying to find the nephew too, but they're trying to find him for different reasons. And the heroine and Matt Rogan fall for each other. And it's a hard fall because he's a psychopath. In the beginning, like, he captures her and he's interrogating her. And because she has magic that people don't know about, she's able to like hold him off. And of course, that's a turn on. Of course. And so now he's like, what are you? I need to know more about you. I need to have you. And he
Mm.
even says, as they're like decide to work together, and he's like just casually mentions, I think we should have sex. And she's like, what? She's like, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. As we move our business relationship along, that we should also make it physical. I think this would be a good idea. He just kind of just like, of course she wants to, but she's like, absolutely not. But he's like, he's the bad boy. He's rich. He's like the most powerful magical kind. He's very blunt. And my favorite thing, this is one of the things that I do appreciate from my ex-husband that he never let me get away with. Like, the hero wanted to give him the silent treatment. And he was like, hell no. He basically, and she like barricades herself into her house, and he basically uses his magic to like build like this floating stairway to her. Like, if you are mad at me, fine, but we're going to talk it out. We're not doing this silent stuff. We're going to have a conversation about it. And I'm just like, you're right. That's what should happen. It was 3 books, Leslye. It's 3 books of their romance. And it does not let up. It does not do any of the cliche things of, I hate it when it's like the second book, they have to break up. Obviously, no. She does the thing. They do the thing where these people are like, we belong together. And all the forces just come at them and they face everything together. They still have their squabbles. They're still at each other's throats, but put against anybody else, they are a united team and they're going to kick your butt. And then they're going to go back to having their argument. And that's like, yes, these are the types of romantic series that I like. When the couple, don't you dare come at them individually, because they will always have each other's back and then they will fight each other. And yeah, it's a 7-book series. The 4th book is the handover from our heroine to her sister, and then the last 3 books become the sister's book with her hero, which were okay. But you could not top Matt Rogan. You just could not. Yeah. Bravo,
Yay.
bravo. That was my best book of the year. My favorite.
Well, I didn't do this in order necessarily, but I felt like this was appropriate to end on because one of my top books of the year was Heart of Obsidian by one Nalini Singh.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I can't, we've already gone through it. We can go back to that episode, but it's just, I read it basically twice in one sitting.
How many times you read it total? It's just the 2 times, or are you telling the truth?
I mean, I've read pieces of it. Like, I have not gone back because we've been reading the whole series and I've been trying to give that its due diligence, but I will probably be back in this book again soon as a comfort read.
No, I have started Primal Mirror, and of course Caleb makes an appearance, so yeah.
I mean, he's in all of them, right? But yeah, I don't have too much to say about this. It's on the list. It's a 5-star read for me. I adore Caleb's love story. And I think because it's so hard to do without the previous 11 books. It's one of those things where you're building a character and you really want and waiting, and she's using that anticipation. So it's hard to mimic if you don't get the opportunity to do a long series. But yeah, I've kind of just been thinking of how do you create a character like this that people like me would love so much and endear even in a shorter period of time. So that's something I'm noodling on.
Yeah. I love the book too. I didn't reread as you did, but yeah, that is a hallmark of this is going to be a best of when you sit down and you reread it again.
Like, get to the end, go back to the beginning right then and there. Yes, that's how I do.
You also had some honorable mentions, you said.
I did, yeah. Just quickly, End of Story by Kylie Scott. Kylie Scott is one of my favorite authors as well. And that is one where it's a tiny bit of supernatural. Like, she is in this house that she has her aunt has passed away and left her this house that she needs renovations on. Turns out the contractor they send is her ex's best friend, and her ex and her had a terrible breakup. But she and the best friend had been cool back then, but she doesn't really want to deal with him. But he's the only one who could do the work, starts doing the work. They find in the wall, as he's repairing something inside of the drywall, a divorce decree between the two of them from 10 years in the future. And the whole thing is like, what is happening? He thinks it's a trick that she planted it. She's like, why would I plant this? It's, you don't know how this could happen. And so, their love story, I don't know if we could call it a grumpy sunshine a little bit, but it was very sweet. I love
Mhm.
Kylie Scott, and I love this sort of mystery of
Mhm.
how this happened and
Yeah.
them being pushed together, dealing with, his best friend who is a terrible person. And
Yeah.
sometimes, guys, and I guess women too, but you mostly see this with guys where their friendships are based on different things than ours
Yeah.
are, and they're not
Yeah.
always on whether your friend is a good person. It's more like, "Oh, I've
Yeah.
known him since I was 6 years old. We're
So I
best
have
friends."
to say his friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and the friend comes on back in the scene. It's just,
Yeah.
and she's a great heroine too. Kylie Scott writes great, heroes and heroines. Quickly, Ninth
Wait,
House.
wait.
Oh, go
Did
on.
you, because Stage Dive got made
Yes.
into a movie.
Oh, I haven't seen it. It's
I
on
know
Passion
I told you about this on Passionflix.
right, I don't even know how to get Passionflix anymore. I had subscribed when they first came out, and then I stopped.
I mean, do a 7-day trial or it's like $5 a month, worth it. I
Really?
can't remember the first Stage Dive book, and it was
Yeah.
really well. This is coming from 2 film snobs.
Okay. Because
It was
Passionflix
really well
films
done.
are not known for being, like,
They did a good
amazing.
job. This is maybe movie number 100 that they've made. They did a good job. I
Cool.
was very happy.
Yeah, and Stage Dive, great series. I think it might be due for a reread. I do reread Kylie Scott sometimes. Her Hitman one, I've reread a couple of times. I think it's
Yeah.
called Lies. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that book so much. I've reread that at least 2 or 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, and then I really, there's some books that are, that stayed with me. They didn't make the best of, but I'm glad I read them, like Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which, has some issues. There is a love story there, but it's going to be over probably 3 books or 5 books, however many books she wants to put in that series. Um, I have not read the second one in that series, but like that was cool. And then The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer, which is sort of a cozy-ish fantasy about, it's sort of like a Willy Wonka story where there's this guy who wrote these children's books, and he invites the super fans to this island for this game. And these kids who had written to him, and no spoilers, but like they were the super fans of this children's book series. Now they're grown up. They each have different reasons for wanting to come to this island and win all this money if they get through this game. And there is a love story in it, and it's really cute. It's kind of delightful. It's kind of like, one of those bright Technicolor books with hints of darkness here and there, but I enjoyed that one a lot as well. Yeah, so those are some of my honorable mentions. And then honorable mention as an author who I think I read in the past 2 years, I've read something like 60 books by her because she writes very short insta love, and this is Cassie
Oh,
Mint.
yeah.
I I can't get into a lot of the short insta love books
Mhm.
because they're not complete stories. Cassie Mint can put a complete story into 20,000 words, maybe. I don't know how
Mhm.
long these books are. I read them in one sitting, and I like the style. She's very consistent in her approach to it. So you are getting the, sort of that meet cute on the page. You get enough of them actually falling for each other.
Mhm.
Then she does the sex scene, and then the book is over. Basically, you get a tiny little epilogue. It's a good formula. The first book I read by her is Grump Gone Wild, but you can really start anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, so that's kind of my honorable mention of just an author. I can't pick out any one book because she's very consistent. They're all kind of the same, but they're giving you that same feeling that, if you are a romance reader, you are looking for over and over again. And I appreciate her for that. You have some
Hey.
honorable mentions too, right?
I do. Well, there is. I read all of. Well, that's not true. I only read the Burn for Me series with Alona Andrews, and then I talked about Katie Wilde and how I read all of her Deadland series, and then with Ruby Dixon. I can't remember the name of her romantasy series, but I read all of those as well. And then I got on this Susan Wright kick. Susan Wright, who writes a lot of shifter romance, and I can't remember the name of her series as well, but she did. Susan Wright, what did you do? I can't even remember the names of them, but I read just about every book that she wrote in these the packs. It was like the Phoenix pack. There was a couple of different packs that she wrote. I read all of her packs, and they were like weird shifters. They weren't always like werewolves. She had like honey badgers and a Tasmanian devil, and one girl was a snake. That should not have worked. I don't understand how it worked, but it did. And there was always kind of a suspense element in there as well. I tore through her stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then I got on Lorraine Heath binge. And was it The Scandalous Gentleman? There was one of her series that I just could not stop reading, and I did not write the name of it down. I just wrote down Lorraine Heath because I tore through them. Was it it was either The Scoundrels of St. James. I think that was it. Was that it? I'm looking at my Goodreads right now. In Bed with, yes, that was it. The Scoundrels of St. James. And it was this story of these they were orphans. Was that it? I might be wrong. But the what, no, I am wrong. It was Sins for, I think it was Sins for All Seasons. Yes, that was, I got it mixed up. It was Sins for All Seasons, and these were all like illegitimate children of like dukes and duchesses, and they came to this woman, and a lot of times these children would go to these women and they would kill them. But this mom was like, no, I cannot do this to these babies. Even though I can't afford it, I'm going to take care of these kids. And it was every kid that she took care of got their story, and
Yeah.
it was so addictive. I could not stop reading this series. They were so well crafted. They came full circle. Oh yes, it was the Sins for All Seasons, and it was so yummy. Ugh, I highly recommend.
Yeah.
Those are the
I'm
2
pretty sure
authors that we read.
I read, that entire series
You
as
did?
well. Yeah, I've read a bunch of hers. I think there's a Texas series that I read from her too. So I do remember that. That was a few years ago.
Oh, yummy. Yummy, yummy, yummy. So, Alona Andrews, Susan Wright, Lorraine Heath, and then the Katie Wilde Deadlands, like, you're set. You're set. And then anything by Allie Hazelwood, she was unfair. Maybe if you read some of her stuff, you can grab back some of the talent that she pulled from the second dip. Yeah.
Always lots of good things to read. We apologize for your
No,
TBR.
we don't.
It's the work of infinity to get through my TBR, the work of a lifetime and then beyond.
Yeah, this is true. Oh, so Leslie, so what are you reading anything right now that is like totally captivating you and making you happy?
I am actually been watching something.
Oh,
Yeah, so I rewatched Severance, which is on Apple TV Plus, the first season, because the second season, as we are recording this, has just come out.
okay.
So Severance is an amazing show. I It is just gorgeous. Like the production design, the costumes, everything links together so well with the story. It's got some twists that are amazing if you haven't seen the first season. That last episode is just legendary, just the way they end it. So I'm really excited for season 2 because it's been 2 years and they left us with
Mm.
this, I guess, a crazy cliffhanger. I don't know if it's a cliffhanger. I mean, it's a big twist. Yeah, more of a big twist, which like, what's the difference between a huge twist and a cliffhanger? Maybe we can talk about that at some point, but, Severance, so good. So, so good.
Okay.
Are you reading or watching anything amazing?
I finished some stuff. Okay, I want to talk about what I finished and then I'll talk about what I'm reading. I finished The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, which Leslie recommended because I have an idea for an epistolary. And I really enjoyed it. I don't know that I want to go and read the rest. Are they epistolary or they're just set in this world?
No, the second book, which I just finished, which is The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, is not
Mhm.
epistolary. It's a very different vibe from the first one. I know
Okay.
there's gonna be a third one,
Mhm.
so, I like her writing, I like this world, but yeah,
Yeah,
Undertaking of Heart and Mercy is just
the
top
world,
notch.
yeah, was just really, really good. It was recommended to me, with to read Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura because, one of the critique partners that I have, maybe at some time we'll talk about grad school, but one of the critique partners that I have is writing an action adventure romance, so I said that I would buddy read that with her, so I read that and I would recommend it, but what I'm reading right now, I tried to read The Hurricane, which was another recommendation from grad school, and I'm having trouble getting into it. And I think I'm having trouble because of The Hangover. Did you read The Hurricane Wars?
No, who's this by?
The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon.
No, I'm not familiar.
I'm just
It was
having
a Go on. I thought it was a different
no,
Hurricane book.
I'm having trouble because of the world building. I feel sorry, Thea, but I feel like you're doing a lot of info dumping, and that's always hard for my brain in the beginning. All the
Mhm.
explaining, the facts, I can't line them up. I line up what the characters are doing first. So I'm having trouble keeping all that straight in my head. So I stopped that and I started Primal Mirror by Nalini Singh, which I'm really enjoying. Yeah.
Excellent.
Classic. It feels like classic Nalini Singh. It feels like a new start, a breath of fresh air because we're in a new pack. I'm very happy. Yeah. I opened it just to be like, okay, let me get started on this because it might take me a couple of days. Yeah, I will likely be finished this weekend. It's really good. I'm really enjoying it.
Did we set a time to record that?
No, we did not. We'll figure that
Okay.
out though.
I'm just trying to, like, make sure I'm not missing anything. We can cut this out. But,
Behind the scenes.
yeah, I was like, "Did I miss a meeting?" 'Cause
No,
I'm like, "I have not started this book
we
because we
will
didn't."
talk about that after we stop recording.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, you guys get a little bit of behind the scenes. But so we're gonna go figure that out right now. But for now, we thank you for joining us. Please let us know what you think. What's on your TBR? What was your best of 2024? And what are you looking forward to reading in 2025? Let us know in a comment on YouTube, or you can also share it with a friend and let us know what they're reading. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And always check out our website, inkandmagic.net, to see our reading schedule. Primal Mirror is coming up next, or depending on
Soon.
when this drops,
Yeah.
soon, not exactly next. But we have more ideas in the hopper. We're gonna be doing cool things for after we finished, Side Changeling, so keep up with us at inkandmagic.net, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.